guys, welcome to another episode of 5Fs to Love, Real Talk with the Men. Tonight we're going to have a real conversation around dating someone with children or not dating someone with children. There's so many different variables that come into play when you're dating or considering dating someone with children. So tonight on Real Talk with Men, we have Michael. Michael, welcome.
Hey, beautiful. How are you?
I'm outstanding. And yourself? You look so nice. I like your shirt.
Thank you. Thank you. I knew I was coming on, so I found it.
You had to do a little extra. It
I
looks
had to
like
do a
you've been
little
working
extra.
out. You look kind of muscular. What's happening?
Well, a push-up or two doesn't hurt.
It doesn't. Well, guys, you also know we have Reverend Gaylon. So, Reverend Gaylon, how are you?
Doing well. How about yourselves?
I'm doing
Spectacular,
outstanding.
spectacular, sir.
You know, I'm really excited about this topic. And for me, it's a real topic because as a single mom raising my son, it was a real hot topic in how I managed that, and I'm not going to say I was always on the plus side of the conversation with people when I made what I thought were pretty good decisions, parent decisions, right? So like this is just a major conversation. So here we go. What do you guys think about tonight's topic?
It will stir us. It will stir the pot. I will say that it will stir the pot.
What about you, Mike? You think we're going to be stirring some pots around here?
That's possible. I've stirred a few pots and tasted here and there, so the perspective should be very interesting.
I'm really excited about it. So our first question headed out tonight is, when you have decided you are no longer interested in dating someone with children, how do you communicate that, with a potential mate, with potential mates? And I'll be honest with you, I think people need to be more honest and sincere about it. And I know Brian's not here tonight, but Brian and I talked about it. And just by the way, everybody, Brian wishes he could be here. He started a new job, so he's not able to make it tonight. But he says he's going to watch it afterwards and post some comments. But we were talking because everyone who watches the show, you guys know that Brian is single and he's looking to get married. But his question was, he's over 50 and he had to really think about it. I posed a question, are you willing to date someone who has small children? And he kind of said, you know what? I didn't even think about that. That is something I need to think about. He's over 50. His children are adults who are married and have children. So
Yeah.
now it's kind of like you're starting over again. Do you really want to start over? And so he asked me, he says, well, Chris, you're 50. Your son is an adult. I said, yeah, my son is a grown man child. He's still 19. So I call him a grown man child because he's an adult, but he's still he's like if anything goes wrong, he still calls mom, right? So he's my grown man. But that never stops, by the way. Even when they're in their 20s, 30s, 40s, I was still calling my parents. So, but it just makes me feel better because he's a giant. It just makes me feel better that he's still like a child a little bit. But let me just say this. In my 50s, I would prefer not to date anyone who does not have children who are not at least in high school. Or you got to be in 8th grade, getting ready to go to 9th grade. Like, I don't want to start from scratch with ABCs. And I don't think that's wrong for me to say that I've done that. I don't want to do that. And the only reason why I say that is because at 50, you realize that whomever you're with at this point, you may have 20 good years with them. Do I really want to spend 10 or 15 of them raising a kid with no time, with just us cultivating that relationship? I don't know, Mike. I mean, am I wrong for thinking that?
No, I think at a certain point in your life, I think definitely. And as you made it clear that that was not something that you wanted to have a part of your life. And I think that I have probably vacillated on that because there was a time when you say, "Hi, how you doing? What do you do for work? Do you have any children?" Yes. Well, it was really nice meeting you. And being done, because that was just not happening. But you reach a certain point in your life where you that may be an option, and so I'm kind of on the fence actually, if I would be.
You really are.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
right. So Gaylon, you do relationship counseling. Has that been an issue when couples come to you as far as is that like before they get married and they're just doing real talk just with you without the spouse?
I've seen some real challenges with people who have children and are considering getting married, for instance, or getting serious and want to move in with each other. Because I think it can be beautiful and I think it can be challenging, but I think it depends on a couple of things. First thing, uh, on the female side, I've seen either women who are extremely overprotective and they say, I want someone to help me raise my child, but they don't really mean that. They just mean help me provide for my child.
Yeah.
Totally different things. Okay. So that becomes an issue because most guys don't want to have investment without say so.
Right.
So that's the issue. Then they can be, I've seen ladies who are so infatuated that they can't wait to, push the kid out the door. So, and that, which, of course, the child might be a little upset with the parent.
Right.
But they project that on the person the new person that comes into the experience. The new person becomes a scapegoat.
Wow.
So, just talking about just the mental dynamics of it. Anytime a new person enters to a thing, that person can be blamed for what was already wrong in a relationship. But
Right.
The new equation, meaning the new person, now becomes the embodiment because they're triggering all of the stuff that was maybe laying under the surface, still being expressed, but not necessarily noticed. And
Right.
now it becomes a stronger dynamic. Now, on the guy side, some of the things that I've heard, is, be very mindful that you don't try to substitute someone who already has their father in their life, like the proverbial child statement, "You're not my father."
Right.
So you got to be really careful about that. Like, so okay, be open and receptive. Give the men try to give the children an opportunity to build a relationship, but you can't force your way in. Then there's the dynamic of which I find interesting. When dealing with this conversation with guys,
Mm-hmm.
I've seen guys, and I actually even had a relative who did this, where they went so far as to say, okay, well, we're going to figure out how to get rid of the child's father. I'm going to adopt the kid. I'm going to do certain things of that nature. I've seen those situations happen. And then the relationship doesn't work out. The marriage doesn't work out. And now that child is legally theirs.
Gaylon, you're already at question number 4. That was like you're giving the meat and potatoes.
The gravy.
But what I think the overall issue, then, let me at least tie it up into a knot, is this.
Mm-hmm.
The kid is going to play off of the parent in the relationship.
Yeah.
One way or another. Okay. And that's what you really have to watch, because a lot of times people have unrealistic expectations with their children because their children don't view them as a person that needs love, compassion, dating, things of that nature. That's mama, that's daddy. And if that baseline isn't understood, then it creates other things. They just can't see you like that unless it's honest conversation. And if they're too young, they can't see it anyway.
Right. And that's actually one of our questions coming up in a few minutes. Wallace, thank you so much for joining us. He said, in this day and age, the lack of a real parenting, grandchildren also factor into the equation. And I agree with you, because at 50, sometimes you become a parent, grandparent, right? Because the child who's your adult child is not taking care of the children. So now you're a grandparent parent, and those grandchildren are with you full time. So that's actually definitely another conversation within that conversation. It's so many dynamics to this, and that's why I said, you're right. It's like a big it's a big conversation to have on this podcast. We're going to try to do our best to cover it. So question number 2 is, when children are involved in a relationship, what is the first thing that pops in your head? Mike, what's the first thing that pops in your head when children are involved? When you meet them, you don't know they have children. They're like, and you ask that question. I think that was question number 3 for you. What pops in your head after you realize that person has children?
Their father. Is their
You
father
wonder who-
is the father crazy? Is the mother crazy? What's that dynamic like? That's the main thing, is the mental state of the parent. Because some people, they don't want they want their dads don't want their kids around, other guys, and moms like, where they come from, blah blah blah, want to do a background check. So it's just a really touchy subject, and I think that being the oldest of 5 brothers and a single mother, my mother, she never brung. We never saw anyone that she was dating until it was like serious into the relationship, and just saw a television show the other day to talk about that, and they were like, just met the person and wanted to meet the guy's daughter, and he was like, well, I'm not comfortable with you meeting her yet. And they were like, well, what do you mean? Like, is something wrong with me? He said, that's not it. He said, I love you, I'm in love with you, but I'm not ready for you to meet my child. And her friends had to, console her and say, well, aren't you glad that you're with someone who considers their children, who's protective of their children, not just lets anyone come in front. And it's a real thing, but that's definitely like the first thing that pops off is the mental state.
I'm gonna say I agree with you. Speaking as a parent, raising and also being the child in that situation, when my mother got remarried, he knew us. Because they knew one another, but he didn't know us. We knew him because of how he interacted with my mother in a professional way. But when he started to pursue her as a legitimate potential mate, it was a different type of thing. And it was so funny because there was it was when I got the ring and we were leading towards serious, then we met him on a different level. It was, it wasn't, oh, well, this is someone, you remember him? No. That wasn't happening. So, and I really respected my parents. And by the way, that's a picture of my parents in the back in that photo. That's them. I love them. They're no longer living. I just want to say that's why that picture stays back there, because love is what I saw in them, right? It was just beautiful. But anyway, so getting back on track. So for me, when I made a conscious decision at a time in my life when I wanted to have a child and I wasn't married, it was very much a conscious decision. I knew what that meant. That meant that my personal life, my personal needs then took backstage, that he became my priority. And I made sure I did that. And I remember one person who I was potentially thinking about marrying, my son and I, we laugh about it now, but at the time when he met me, I wasn't doing very well. And he was actually here taking care of me and my son at the same time because he wanted to help out. And my son made him a chocolate milk. But in his mind, he's only like 5 or 6 years old. He added hot sauce, pepper. He thought he was poisoning him.
Whoa.
So in his mind, he was like, why are you in my mother's? Because he came upstairs. He was like, why are you in my mother's room? First, and she's not doing well. I'm going to poison you. So it was, now we laugh. But when I thought about it, I said to my son, his mind, he's 5 or 6 years old. This person belongs to me. And I don't know who you are, but I'm not willing to share her. So it was so funny because after, a couple months, he had asked me to marry him and we eventually got married. But it was just so funny because my son, he was just like, I'm not having this. So at 5 or 6 years old, he just thought, this is not happening. I'm going to do what I can do. So we laugh about it now. But I will say this to you. When children are involved, I think a lot of times it's hard for you to make a choice between their happiness and your happiness, because you still have the same desire and need to be loved and appreciated. And I'll be honest with you, that was the first person that I even allowed to come around my kid. And it was a shocker, I think, even for him, because the whole time he just thought it was just him and me forever. Like, there's nobody else coming up in this mix. And so when he showed up, it was a little amazing. But I will say this, I know from talking to a lot of my friends that a couple of my girlfriends who were married shifted over, left their husbands for a woman, and now the husband is angry. So when they told the new potential person, hey, you know, I got a kid or a couple kids, and they go, well, wait a minute, I thought you were a lesbian. Well, I was married before. Well, that's a whole different conversation. So now we got to deal with an ex-husband who is probably not happy that you're with a woman at this point. And that's a whole different dynamic. So, yeah, I think, you know, when you think about dating, especially how people think about dating right now in relationships, you have people who are swingers. You have people who have decided for themselves that I'm not with the right gender, so I'm going to date the same gender as I am. You have people who are dating outside of their race or outside of their religion. So all of those things play a part. Yeah. I remember when I thought I was going to date somebody who was Jewish, and they were talking about what I would have to do, what my son would have to do. I said, well, wait a minute now. We can't, I didn't think about all of that. I was like, can we just be together? So, you know, those are things that I think realistically we don't think about. I mean, I don't know, Reverend Gaylon, when you do marriage counseling, I'm quite sure this is a hot topic, especially people who are not the same religion or they're dating outside of their gender, outside of their culture. It's a lot of dynamics. And then the kid pops up, and what's the first thing that pops in their head? They're not thinking this kid is going to call somebody else daddy, or they're going to be in a new religion. How about if you were a Baptist and you dating somebody who's Muslim? That's a whole different conversation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a mama's
actually know a couple. One was Pentecostal Christian, and like I believe a Sunni Muslim.
Wow.
And they got together, and it was interesting to watch that dynamic, because the young lady just thought, okay, Pentecostal Christianity, or when I grew up, that was called sanctified.
Right.
So they had their, really, serious rules about certain things.
Yeah.
And then as a Muslims have very serious, strict rules about, when you pray, how you dress, what you do, all of these things. And what was interesting to me was what attracted you was the version of the person that you met and dated. Right. But then when you get serious, you want to change them to being somebody else.
Yes.
That's the real challenge. Now bring children into that dynamic, it just amplifies it. Children are a multiplier. So whatever the situation and circumstance is, just start multiplying, not adding, multiplying.
Right.
Whatever the circumstances are. So dating is its own initial. What's interesting about dating, let me just put it this way, is when people start looking at children, regardless of the circumstance of all the mixes that you talked about. I read somewhere somebody says complications were their first thought.
Right.
You have to be able to ask yourself one basic question, and I'm sure both of you have asked yourself this same question one way or another. Is the juice worth the squeeze?
I like the way you put that. I love that.
That's the bottom line. Is the juice worth the squeeze? Because it's going to be extra stuff that goes along with it. It's going to be extra. Is the juice
worth the
squeeze? Because sometimes you just have to be honest enough and say, you know what? This is just an attraction thing. This is a physical thing.
Yes.
This is not a long-term projection thing. And do I want to get in the mix of something? Because we all know that it's easier to get into something than it is to get out.
Okay, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we get back, we're going to find out whether or not the juice is worth the squeeze. Okay, guys, we're back and we need to find out whether or not the juice is worth the squeeze. But before we get into whether or not the juice is worth the squeeze, Quan, thank you so much for joining the podcast tonight. She said, complications or drama are my first thoughts. Agreed. Because you really don't want to bring your kid into anything that's going to be volatile because you're really getting to know that person. And it's like, is this person really who I should be involved with, right? So those are the things that you really want to take in consideration. Okay, and then we have Gertrude. And Gertrude, thank you so much for tuning in this week. She said, "Good evening. I was in a relationship where the individual felt he should be become first. He should be first, and they always think that in some situations. It's amazing. I expressed that to say my child was what is it?
Injured. I think that means injured.
Injured in a school event, and I had to go to the hospital to see about him. The gentleman felt that I should call his father to handle the matter. I mentioned to him then that it was addressed that any concerns about the child will come first, especially if he's injured. Yes, I did call his father to meet me at the hospital. The individual was upset after the matter was addressed, and she put mine, but she didn't finish. I wonder what else the mine was, which I'm with Gertrude, honey, it could be anything. We need to find out what the mine is about. And by the way,
that person was a jerk. That had nothing to do with first things first or anything of that nature.
Yeah.
Somebody says a man that'll ask a woman to turn off her maternal instinct is a jerk.
Yeah, exactly.
Narcissistic, egomaniac.
Exactly.
And I would say the same thing for a female. She asked the man to do the same.
Exactly. And that's one of the things I think, and I'll say it again, it makes it so complicated for some people because, and not saying that Gertrude is this type of person at all, but for some women, Gertrude keyed into that. She was like, I'm sorry, I need to call his father. I'm handling this. Some women would have done exactly what that man asked her to do. Mm-hmm. And just was like, I'm going to go with this. And that's the most unfortunate thing. And we don't think about that. Our children have to be a priority to us at all times. It does not make a difference what the relationship looks like.
Well, Christine, can I just jump in before you
sure.
go to the next question?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying this is what happened to Gertrude, but I grew up around a lot of players in my family, guys who were known. And when you're around a lot of players, sometimes you hear that what I call it pimp talk. Now I'm serious, because my mother used to that's what my mom called it. So I just used the term my mother used. And pimp talk for me is, and my mom used to always tell me, her metaphor was never give a pimp your ear. What that meant was you allow somebody to manipulate you through your hearing. What she was potentially getting was a test. Okay? Because if she would have failed that test, he'd have had her.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So you just got to be mindful that when people try to manipulate you outside of your character, outside of your values, outside of your integrity, what they're actually doing is testing. That's level. So they'll do little tests, and then a situation like this will come up. That's a big test. You fail it. Now they know they can manipulate you at a higher level. And trust me, way more and worse tests are coming down the pike.
All right, Gertrude. And she said back, she said exactly. So Gertrude, you passed the test. You passed the mommy test. That's for sure. Question number 3, have you ever delayed moving forward with someone because of their relationship with their children? And I'm going to tell you, yes. Yes, I have. I think because of my relationship with my son, not that I'm asking you to mimic, but when you don't have a good relationship with your kids, it's one or two things. It's either an unhealthy relationship, a non-existent relationship, and then there's you just have a regular parenting relationship. So there's 3. So for me, I look for people who have overindulgent relationships with their children, that you're overindulging them. And I didn't do that. So what happens is if I end up with you, then you're going to basically try to mimic that same concept when my child is not growing up that way. And the only thing I can say is, when talking to a lot of my friends who are guys, they're like, I grew up in a certain type of household. Well, my parents were parents. They weren't our friends. So when you end up dating or meeting someone who is their friend, the child's friend, is a conflict. Because you're like, okay, how is this going to be managed? Because I'm not coming from that angle, and I don't even know how to come from that angle. And I'm the same kind of person. I don't know how to come from a friend angle. Like my son literally has to say to me right now, Mom, don't look at this TikTok I'm showing you as my mother. Be objective. And the minute I see a TikTok and some girl is naked, the first thing that comes out my mouth, she's a whore. Like I don't know how to control it because I'm just like your mother. And he goes, Mom, don't do that. So then I have to, dial it back, right? I have to dial it back and go, okay, how should I be looking at this? Because he's an adult now, right? So it's not the same parenting. So, I just told him, well, Julian, in my day, if a girl was doing all this, she would be a little loose. I don't know. We wouldn't consider getting to know her. He says, well, Mom, this is what the people are doing right now. And I said, I get that. So, understand it's a conflict. Like for Mike, is it a conflict for you? Because it's just a conflict. I don't know how to handle. I mean, do you delay moving forward depending on what type of relationship that person has with their children?
I would definitely say yes. I have not had that experience. They were all incredible parents. But I would think that a woman who, because my mother had 5 again, just because of my example, if you didn't take the time to spend time with your kids, communicate with your kids, not necessarily, I'm kind of in between the where you are with the rod and the hammer, because I have dated multiculturally, so I've experienced a friend as a child, the child as a friend, whatever, and how that works. So again, like I say, it's just a weird, place. The whole time we were talking about this question, but I would definitely think that neglect in any shape, form, or fashion, the inability, just to communicate with your child, or you dropping your kids off anywhere and with anybody, that was a definite, not something that because I would, if I care more about your kids than you, then it's a problem. Basically.
Well, what about the parents that treats their kids like a friend, like they're friends?
Yeah,
like
what I'm saying. It's
you they partying with you. Like I don't get that part.
I've had to literally like assert in that type of relationship. Because I think that I get the concept, but it's like when your child is cussing you out, talking back and saying what they want to do, when they're embarrassing you in public, it's not the time to address it then. But it's like I didn't. I go back to that to your friend said I didn't grow up that way, and so it is hard to not interject or interact. So you have to. That's one of those things. You back to the juice. And I really came to that. I would in the beginning. I'm thinking about is this worth it? Is this worth it? Because of the my past relationship. So I'm at that place now where pretty much 5 or 10 minutes in, you're like, yeah, it's not worth it. And and trusting your instincts, on those situations. Like I've seen this block. I don't need to go down the block already. I know Mrs. Morton lives 5 blocks down on the right. St. Patrick's is 6 blocks to the left. I already know that street, so I'm not going to frustrate myself by trying to retake that class again. So.
Okay, so my question to both of you is this: what about the mom who treats the son like a husband? Well, because there is no father.
Well, again, I've never had to deal with this, personally. I was.
But you're relationship counselor, so I'm sure
right.
You've got the.
But I've seen it. Never had to deal with it. I'm currently married. Was married before, and that's been the majority of my adult life.
You know what, Gaylon? I only bring that up because one of Julian's schoolmates, and I love him to pieces. His name is similar. His mom treated him like a husband and not a son.
Well, I consider first of all, in my space, even if it's my own family or whatever, I'll say something about it. If it's friends, I'll say something about it because a boy shouldn't have the expectation of taking care of mom. A boy should have the expectation of growing up. And, like you'll hear little things like, 7-year-old Billy he's the man of the house. or
Yeah.
stupid. I don't know what other way for me to say it. Stupid statements like this that come out of people's mouths. Okay, and what ends up happening is, that makes it very difficult because this boy thinks that they have a level of authority in the home that is not earned. Okay. Yeah. There is a difference between a man and a boy. That boy isn't even paying for the pillow they're sleeping on. No. But they want to have say about how things get done and what their mother can and can't do and all of that type of stuff. I think it's criminal to have a boy, to even say to a boy, you're the man of this house, or people to say, you take care of your mom now and all this type of stuff. Because now look, I had a fabulous relationship with my mother. Fabulous, but my mom was strong. And it would have been no situation or circumstance where I would have viewed myself as my mom's friend, even though me and my mom would go to the show. We could go, grab stuff to eat all the way up to when she passed away. We were really close, but I never wanted the mama's boy experience, and she never wanted a mama's boy.
Exactly.
Therefore, it was balanced enough to be breathing room. And I can say this from this perspective. When I was younger and my mom and dad, they divorced early. And then I was going through that back and forth stuff with the mom and dad. And then dad had his own challenges. I was one of those kids that were like, I'm going to get my mama a Father's Day card on Father's Day. And then when I got older, I realized my mom can't be my dad.
Exactly.
And I actually said to her, I'm not going to be getting you Father's Day cards anymore because you're a great mom.
Exactly.
But nobody can be somebody's mother and father.
Exactly.
So I think the child has to evolve. Sometimes the son evolves enough to allow the mother to be able to see things differently, and sometimes the mother has to grow in that as well. But too many people have the conversation around, this little boy is the man of the house. Then you end up having that situation like that Tyrese movie where Ving Rhames was choking that boy out. Baby boy. That was in their room. Baby boy.
Okay, I just want to say, folks, we got to go to commercial break. But as we think about baby boy and Tyrese being choked out, I want you to watch these commercials.
Tu piel, ¿qué será? ¿Qué será de mí? No seas parte de mi amanecer. ¿Qué será?
Okay, guys, welcome back. And if you missed the first and second segment, I'm going to tell you missed a lot. By the way, we did reference the movie Baby Boy with Tyrese and Ving Rhames. By the way, that is such a true statement when it comes about single moms and what you said about him being the head of the household. So Anissa, thank you so much for joining us. She said, in my experience, there is a correlation between a man's relationship with his child and that man's relationship with the child's mother. If the mother was a significant person in his life, he invests more in the relationship with the child. I sympathize with the child and believe he or she is worthy of his father's love and support regardless of the relationship of the parents. If the man walks away from his own blood, that tells me a lot about his character. So what do you think about that, Reverend Gaylon? You've been through marriage counseling. Do you agree with what she's saying about the value that a man places on a woman and it correlates to the child?
What I would say is how a man's relationship upbringing, and it can be mother as well, because that's an assumption, is because everybody's not raised by mama. That's why I'm just saying that from that perspective. Everybody's not raised by mama. How they're raised and how they are raised to treat women, their relationships with women have a lot to do with how they treat the woman. Now, I don't like speaking in absolutes. So let me just say that right off the bat. I don't like speaking in absolutes. What I will say is this, and I'm reading the statement because I just want to make sure I get it. The last sentence is what stood out to me. If a man walks away from his own blood, that tells me a lot about his character. What that is saying, as long as there's obviously no mental health issues and things of that nature, is that person's not willing to live up to the responsibility that they created. That's the real issue. Now, people who are unwilling to live up to the responsibility they created can come from other dynamics, but normally that means that they're damaged. Okay, that's one. Second thing, I've seen that sometimes, and and I'm talking now from a male perspective, that there sometimes have been women who will choose not to see the damage in a man because they want them so badly.
Agreed.
Okay, so
did
this
you all
person,
talk?
huh?
Did you all talk before?
No, we did not talk before the
podcast.
You know, I like the questions to be a surprise. But go ahead.
No, I had no idea. Yeah, the you might get through my thought process.
Sorry.
If a person's not willing to live up to their responsibilities, okay, that they help create, that also means that they have damage of character, damage of integrity that might have been a part of their upbringing. It might have been the dynamic of what they feel as though they didn't get, like, like what you do with your cars. Remember when you were on my podcast, you were talking about basically people's love languages.
Yes.
If that child needed a affirmation and words of encouragement and things of that nature, but their mother shows love by just working. I handle the business. Okay. That could affect that child, that man growing up's ability to understand and connect with a person, because what they needed, they didn't receive because the parent didn't check in long enough to make sure that they parented that child based upon the child's need or needs, not just based upon their own personality. And you see this, you see that a lot. But when it's all said and done, I'm a big believer that a lot of these, and I know this might not be a popular statement, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Sometimes ladies don't want to admit that all of the red flags were there, and they started having babies with these folks that they ain't had no business having babies with. Then they have the baby and then think they're gonna change with baby number 2, 3, 4, and 5. It doesn't work that way.
Nope.
And so people have to take responsibility for who they lay down with, men included. I never forget when I was, and I'm just using this as an example. I never forget, and my stepfather, before he was my stepfather, he was a police officer and for the Chicago Police Department. And my mom wouldn't marry him until I became an adult, by the way. She was one of those that said, I'm not marrying this man until he becomes an adult. So I'm like a young guy. I met him when I was like 11, 12. Oh, wow. We're in this car. He drives me to his district on the west side of Chicago. And he's showing me experiences. And while we're doing this, he's talking to me about staying away from baby makers, staying away from this situation, staying away from these type of circumstances, whatever. And that conversation, which I can recall almost verbatim, really shaped my ability to say, okay, certain circumstances I'm just going to stay away from. All right. Because what he was really trying to say to me was, as you grow older, you got to be responsible. You got to be responsible for who you hang around. You got to be responsible with who you lay with if you choose to do that. You got to be responsible with who you date. And because there are a lot of after effects that come along with bad choices. Okay. Now, if a person is desperate to be with somebody and desperate to give that child that mother energy or that father energy, that can create desperation as well.
Yep.
And out of desperation can come a lot of bad choices. So I'm just about choices. Now, if you see somebody that's exhibiting bad character, I just go back to the Maya Angelou quote, Christine. When a person shows you who they are, believe them the first time. That will keep you out of so much drama if you just follow it.
Just follow that one. And I just want to be clear, folks. We got to go to a quick commercial break, but you better think about Maya Angelou and what Reverend Gaylon just said. When a person shows up and tells you who they are, you better believe them. Premiere what we're showing next week on next week podcast, the 5 F's to Love, Real Talk with the Women. And this is our episode.
Talk to me, it's what I want the most in my life. They say you're out of my league, but I don't give a damn. No, deep down, I know you want it. You wanna take a leap and jump in. You wanna fall in love. You get me spinning, wouldn't it be awesome if you just kiss me slowly and had me in your arms? If I could make you see it, baby, with me something to make the starlight jealous up above. Oh, you make me up. Hey, let's go out when I see you moving up. Hey, like the air, I love when you groove like that. Oh, hey, could be us, kissing in the moonlight. Hey, I'm just in.
Okay, guys, we're back. And if you didn't have a moment to reflect, we were talking about Maya Angelou. And the comment was, and I think this is a good way to apply it to dating time and time again, when a person shows you who they are, you better believe it. Instead of changing your mind about who they are and trying to think that you're going to change them, understand they are who they are. They're an adult, and it's going to be really, really hard to shift that person. You either got to love them where they're at or leave them where they're at. You got to know when to fold them and know when to hold them and know when to walk away. And that's Kenny. All right. So here we go. I don't know. There's so many songs out there that can tell you about relationships.
Oh my Lord.
You know, but you know what's funny though, Christine?
Yeah.
We tend to sing the wrong songs about relationships.
We do.
Because
Yes.
you know, if you listen to Midnight Train to Georgia,
Oh,
this is a classic. Love Gladys Knight, by the way.
love her.
She used to show up at Christ Universal Temple all the time because she was married to Les Brown.
Yes.
And but if you listen to one of the lyrics, she said, she sang, "I'd rather live in his world than without him in mine." Not create a new world.
Yes.
That's a big statement.
It is a big statement. And I think she tried to live in somebody else's world and decided to walk away from that world. So I don't think she should keep singing that Midnight Train to Georgia.
I really think people should take a personal inventory of their song selections, because I remember there was a time the song always correlated with like a situation I was going through. And a lot of it had to do with, this is in the past back in the day, but I ended up dating like 2 people that were married, and my life correlated with the song, with the music I was listening to. And one day I thought about it, I was like, this is something. Once I started getting into new thought, I said, let me change what's happening, because it was like verbatim, like the characters that I idolized. It was always, the struggling. Me and my friends, we could do like the whole scenario of Color Purple on a train, and people, they favorite that part with Miss Sophia, and she was, struggling all her life. She had to fight, And it's like you look up and it's like all my life I had to fight. And it's like you had to like realize like you were like prophesying, your reality, prophesying and creating your reality. And
Yeah, you were probably singing Luther. You probably singing Luther, Mike. If you're not with the one you love, love the one you with.
And that song, you can be at your lowest, and that song it'll pop up, and you be on your way.
Wait a minute, and I want to be clear too, so nobody is under any misunderstanding. So myself, Michael, and Reverend Gaylon are all of the same religion, and so when we talk about these, I don't want you guys to think it's an inside joke. It's not.
No.
We just kind of believe what you put out in your world is what it emulates, and that's all we're saying. So these songs, what he's saying is those songs begin to mimic in his real life, and that's what we believe. So I don't want you guys to be like, well, what are they having an inside conversation over there? No, we are just very serious about this. Okay, so I just want to be clear. So Anissa, thank you again so much for joining. She said, Mike, Carl Thomas, I wish I never met her.
I had that one too.
I just want to say, Cook, you know that's our time when we was in Martha's Vineyard. Do you know that's all we played was Carl Thomas? I don't know why you acting like that, Cook. She know that's all we played was Carl Thomas, and she know why. I can't stand her. She gonna throw that out there. Ooh, Cook, you know you wrong. Okay, so when you think about have you dated or married someone with children, how did you manage the relationship with their ex-spouse? And I think that's like a really big conversation, because depending on how the relationship kind of separated really kind of sets the tone for how you intro in. I mean, if it was a decent separation, then everybody's friendly and, easygoing. And if it's not, so like in my situation, I can only speak to my situation. No one knows this, and I mean, you're going to know it now because I'm going to tell you, but I wasn't married to Julian's father. I wanted to have a kid, and so there was an understanding. It was like a contractual understanding. So it was a different type of relationship. So anybody who came in my life, my relationship with his father was that we were friends. So there was no competition. He was Julian's father and he was my friend. So that was a different type of dynamic. It wasn't a horrible breakup. It wasn't a horrible relationship by any means, but it was what it was. But I've also heard and experienced where people were literally getting ready to just tear each other's heads off, and they end up getting a divorce. So when you're walking into that type of relationship with someone, I don't know if this guy is going to be really opening his arms or her opening her arms to you being a parent to their child. So that's a different type of dynamic. And just to let you know, and I'm only speaking from my perspective, Reverend Gaylon, I'm thinking that puts a lot of stress on a relationship, because the kids are perplexed as to whether I should like you, don't like you. They mean to you some days. I'm not going to say my son's trying to poison my ex, by the way, me and my ex-husband are still really good friends to this day. We divorced for amicable reasons. It wasn't because we didn't love each other. We really did. We just weren't the right people for one another. But I want to say this, he tried to poison him, but it wasn't because of the relationship he had with his father. It was because of the relationship he had with me. He called himself protecting me, right? That's different than a kid trying to poison you because the daddy don't like you or the mama don't like you. That's different.
Well, Christine, I think that it goes back to, yet again, is the juice worth the squeeze? Now, what I would recommend to anybody, this is my pastoral advice.
All right.
Literally, don't engage into someone's life that is too broken for you to be there.
Say that again.
Don't engage into someone's life that's too broken for you to be there. If there's a situation to where, because I mean, like literally, your life could be in danger with the wrong ex.
Yeah.
Okay. Like real talk. Before I got into left the secular business world for full-time ministry, I had a young lady that worked with me. I was a grocery store manager, and I had a person that ran my front end, and she had a wonderful child, wonderful woman, worked hard, whatever. And unfortunately, like a lot of what goes on with these legal systems, just set, it took a lot back then in the 90s to get women orders of protection and other things. So she had this guy that would just show up at work, and he was mean mugging every dude that she was standing by because it was a grocery store. It wasn't like we could keep him away, because he didn't do anything in the store. Next thing you know, her tires are flat. Next thing you know, situations are showing up. And then one day she just disappeared. Like for like a week.
Oh,
We're calling. We don't, calling emergency contact, can't get anybody. Literally on a Sunday morning at 7:05, she walks into the cast on her arm, glasses on because her face was all beat up. And the guy kidnapped her, beat her up, and then she was in the hospital, unconscious. And I'm saying that to say this, legally, and it's not her fault. Hear me what I'm saying. It's not her fault that this man was violent. Outside of maybe she didn't follow her own intuition early.
Right.
I believe.
Right.
The red flags, something shows up and says, hey, don't do this. That situation and circumstance, she has a kid. She's dating somebody that's violent. She had a kid. That situation and circumstance was as bad as it gets.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay. Now, a person that engages in that has to know that they're walking into drama. Okay. Now, every situation is not going to be that extreme by no stretch of the imagination. But you have to start asking yourself when you walk into a situation, has she healed? Has she addressed this situation? Some people, whether she or he, because I know I have some guys that have dated some crazy ladies. Like, has this situation been addressed legally? If need be. And if it hasn't, then again, the juice isn't worth the squeeze.
Folks, I just want to say, if you don't understand the juice isn't worth the squeeze, you'll understand when we get back from these commercial breaks. I'm very excited to announce that we have a new show that we will be welcoming to the 5 F's to Love podcast family. And so check out this premiere of an upcoming launch of one of our new shows coming to the 5 F's to Love brand. Very excited about this one.
Something I could do. I could be running or I'm chasing you, but I won't, 'cause I got better things to do.
Okay, I'm going to tell you, at this point, that situation was 100% devastating. And folks, if you missed the last segment, it was giving one of the plausible concepts that what could happen if you're with someone who you're not evenly matched with. Yeah. It's like that whole Maya Angelou thing when, Reverend Gaylon says, a person shows you who they are, you better believe them, right? And it's a situation where the woman could not in any way control the outcome because she worked employed with someone in an open forum. So, you got to think about those things, because going into that relationship, he just didn't show up crazy. He's been crazy. And thank you, Cook, for agreeing to say that we were listening to Charles Thomas, and you're going to throw that little song out there. I wish I had never met her. That was our song. Don't play, Cook. I will post those pictures, Cook. I got our pictures when we went to Martha's Vineyard. Don't play. And Gertrude says, so true, Pastor. They just love you over here, Gaylon. I just want to be clear about that. They just love Gaylon over here. And overall, I want to say that Mike and I laughed, but, earlier this week or last week, a person showed me who they were, and I asked them for something that honestly I would have asked any person who was a friend. Anyone who knows me, I have a fear or phobia of going to large events by myself, and I can't manage it. And I've been that way my entire life. So I simply asked this person, is it any way possible that you can meet me at this venue and go with me? Because I have to see Lionel Richie. I'm going to fly into Vegas. I've got to see Lionel Richie. Can you go with me? You would have thought that. Now, initially, the person's comment was, yeah, sure, no problem. I would love to do that for you. I would love to, not a problem. It got so dramatic that Mike and I said, what is wrong with this person? It got very intense really fast. And it was only because I asked them, do you mind checking out my podcast and just let me know what you think about it? They immediately went to the far end, like to the extreme. You would have thought that I said, can I borrow $10,000? That's how extreme it was. I was like, okay, I forgot. This is the reason why I stopped. Go ahead, Mike.
You asked them to borrow $10,000 in pennies.
In pennies, exactly. You would have thought, because his reaction was just so like intense. And the first thing I said was, oh, this is why I stopped talking to this person. I totally forgot. So I immediately said, you know what? I'm so sorry I bother you. Don't worry about it. It's no big deal. Their response to me was, you still are not open and willing to listen to me, to hear what my concerns are. It's like, I can't, because you're mentally disturbed. I'm just trying to fly into town, fly in for a concert, fly out the next morning. I just wanted to see Lionel Richie in Vegas. That's all this was about. And I said, OMG. Exactly. So what I'm going to say is, ladies, seriously, you really need to pay attention when people show up and they're telling you who you are. Because I could have overlooked that because of his charm, his good looks, and all of that pizzazz. But I had to remind myself, this is why you disconnected. This was why. Because one day he showed up and did this dramatic moment, and you knew that you had to walk away. So I'm going to say, know when you got to walk away, folks. You got to follow Maya Angelou and Reverend, Gaylon said to you, you got to pay attention now. People show up, they tell you who you are, and you got to pay attention. So our question number 5, which is our last question for tonight on the podcast. Have you ever decided to end a relationship with someone because of their children? I'm going to say yes, but Mike, I'll let you answer that question. Yes. So we're clear. I'm on the yes side.
No, I have not.
You have not?
No. I love all my children. I love them all.
You're such a lovable person. Okay, well, you know what? If somebody's got to be the bad guy, I'll just let it be me. Okay, I ended it. And this is the reason why I ended it. Because she had a trashy mouth. She was extremely disrespectful to me. He would not. The child was. Because it was one of those fathers who raised their child as an equal. Their attitude is, once you get to high school, you're an adult. And so in my household, that's not how it worked. And so she would say stuff to me like, hey, B, this is how it's going down. And I would be like, I'm sorry, what's happening in this moment? I would go to him and say, I'm sorry, can you correct that? I need you to do corrective behavior here. He says, well, I said, I wouldn't let an adult woman talk to me like that, let alone a child. So I think you might want to correct that. He would never step up and correct it. So finally, I think about 3 weeks following the first altercation, I just kind of stepped back. And now to this day, he sends me flowers every year for my birthday with "I apologize" on the card. I know it's from him because he'd only want to say "I apologize." He should apologize, and he's not with anyone right now because of his relationship with his daughter. She is a tyrant. And I refuse to be. That meant I would have to be harassed for that entire relationship by this child. I don't care how old they get. She was just going to do whatever she wanted to do because she had freedom of speech over there. So Reverend Gaylon, I'm sure you've run into that in marriage counseling where people just walked away from a relationship over kids.
I've seen a lot of problems. Normally what I recommend when I see problem situations, when a couple just wants to be together, but they have a child acting up. Mm-hmm. First of all, I drill down on the parent and the child. Explain to the person entering the relationship that when it's all said and done, you're the outsider in this conversation. Mm-hmm. Yep. Now, I don't care how close you are with this person you're dating or you want to marry, and this mm-hmm. my soulmate and all this made up language. You're the outsider in this conversation. Mm-hmm. And in that dynamic, you always will be.
Yep.
Okay. So what I try to do is push, and I mean literally push the parent and the child into family counseling.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So some barriers, some parameters can be set to create the healthy dynamic, because kids normally act up when they don't get what they need. Even with the young lady, at some level, it was something she wasn't getting that required her to act up the way they act up. Now, from a man's perspective, and I'm sure Mike could tell you the exact same thing. I ain't never had to deal with it. Thank God I had a relative that had to deal with this. Ain't nobody bucking up on me.
No.
That's not happening.
Mike, it's unfair. You're 6'6". Who's bucking up to you? You're 6'6" and like a linebacker. Really?
I know, but even the concept is like when you said the girl, like she called you out her name. It's like it's almost like it's like reflex. So you're like, I'm so sorry.
Like,
I really am.
Nah.
Like I was doing this. I was like, no, don't do it. Don't do it. I was like, what is happening?
But those friends with their parents who are friends with their kids, it's a lot of that. It's a lot of that.
Yeah.
Because
anybody that allows you to, here's the thing, anybody that will allow a person that you bring into the experience to be disrespected speaks a lot to the character of the parent.
Yeah.
Bottom line, I'm in this space because you invited me into this space.
Exactly.
And you don't feel as though it's your job to navigate my comfort in this space. Says that your comfort is not a priority.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Their needs and what they wanted, that's the priority. And that by itself needs to be paid attention to.
Okay, so Reverend Gaylon, that's where my problem is. When you get into relationships with people who have that type of relationship with their children, I can only speak from my perspective. A man in my life is different than my son. But if I have to choose as far as me being a parent, my priority is being a parent to my son first. And that's the reason why I didn't allow a lot of people to be around him growing up. He didn't have uncles. It was a whole bunch of uncles, and it was people that I was dating. That's not how it worked in my life. We didn't do all that activity. I got people right now where they call people Uncle Daddy because he was the uncle, but now he the daddy. I mean, I get confused. Mike, are you raising your hand? Did you have a moment? It was an Uncle Daddy.
This was back in the day, Reverend. Go ahead.
And that's the thing. So I get really concerned about that because I think, for me, my son is my son, and it's just that simple. We're not, if I'm having an adult conversation, and even now, my son is a big guy. I mean, he's 6'4". Even now, my son knows if I'm talking to Uncle Mike, what does he do? He don't say nothing, does he, Uncle Mike? He don't say nothing. He just stops talking because I'm talking to Uncle Mike. I didn't ask you your thoughts. Grown man, child. Now, if I say to you, Julian, what do you think? Then that's but what I'm saying is a lot of parents don't have that. Their kids, literally, I've been talking to adults and their kids just in the conversation. Like, I'm like, wait a minute. Is she 10 or is he 10? What is happening? Like, are they really in our conversation right now? I don't know how to manage that. So the only thing I can say is, folks, we got to buckle that down. Anissa, I'm going to tell you right now, you make me put on my glasses.
Okay.
Anissa, don't play. Anissa said, whenever I met a man who has a child with a woman that he was not married to, I see red flags. The baby mama is often resentful because she believes she should be his woman or wife, but did not get her chance. She sees me as an obstacle to her dream family and can actively cause problems. However, if the woman is an ex-wife, she has held that position. She was the closure and usually agrees to co-parent with an interference with his new relationship. So, Reverend, what's your thoughts on that? Anissa, by the way, Anissa will write a paper. Won't she write a paper? She make me put my glasses on every time. Anissa, right.
Well, what I will say, that's been her experience. I recently was helped a couple that had a ex-wife who was extremely bitter. Extremely. I mean, it was tough, and I would have disengaged from the whole conversation, but I knew one of the people that was a part of this new relationship as they were seeking to get married, and children were involved. So, so that woman still had the I don't want him, but I do, because I don't want him to be with anybody else. So look. Mike's worked in ministry just like me for years. We both know this, and I can say this without a shadow of a doubt. And you know how much I believe in the divinity of humanity, being divine image and likeness of God. And I say this statement completely. Sometimes people are crazy. They say one thing, they do something else.
Yep. And
so if you bump into a situation, a circumstance where a significant other, and I'm just going to use this context that Anissa brought up, many times the man, unbeknownst to the woman they're currently dating, has some type of crazy give and take with the one ex.
Oh yeah.
But at some level they like that drama.
Yep.
At some level it feeds their ego.
Yep.
Look how she acting up just to be with me.
Yeah.
And they don't, because you're not always engaging with them.
Yes.
With the ex, with the children. You don't know when he goes over there to see the kids.
Exactly.
He's doing a little flirt thing.
Exactly.
You don't know that, the statements he says, or tell your mama I said this type stuff.
Exactly.
And what ends up happening is mixed signals are being sent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then when mixed signals are sent to the wrong mentality, chaos can ensue.
100%. I agree with you 100%. And I can only say to you people, I try to just share my experiences with you guys and the things that I've done. I know earlier on when I was younger, because of my maternal situation, I did date people with children because I thought that was the only way I could have children. And that being said, so I dated somebody, an exceptional man, and I was a lot younger than him. But one of the things I said was, I want to meet your ex-wife. I want to have dinner with her. And we did. She came over for dinner and she just thought that I was the most unreal person ever. But for me, I grew up in a household where my stepfather was my father. He raised me, and his relationship with me was very close. And I just thought it was so important that for us to be together raising this young man, we ought to be friends, because I'm going to be his mom when he's with me. And then this is your child. So I want to know what it is that you like and don't like, so I can make sure I'm supporting you over here. I don't want it to be any different from our households. And one of the things, even to this day, because he and I are still really good friends, he said to me, I had never seen anybody do that before, who I dated. You were so adamant about that and inviting her over for dinner. He said that really helped our relationship because you were so adamant. But to your point, if she was that far off, that never would have worked.
Mm-hmm.
It never would have worked. So it was a test for me, because if she was so unwilling, that was signals for me that I had to go. That was I'm not a ride or die kind of person like that. I would have been deuces. So women, what I'm saying is use that as an example to measure how that relationship, because when you're with him, he's going to tell you one story. And if you with her and you her friend, and it's another story of why it ended. You don't really know why it ended. So you need to pay attention to those communications after the marriage and kind of use that as a guiding light. So Carolyn, Anita, thank you so much for watching us. Slightly different perspective, putting children first. And she also said, yes, I was moving and he was willing to move with me and my children. However, he had 2 small children with his former wife. I could and did not ask something of him that I would not do myself. Oh my gosh, Carolyn, you are outstanding. I'm going to tell you, Mike, I was in that same situation. Mm-hmm. And I don't get emotional, so I'm not going to get emotional. But this person, I absolutely love this man. And his ex-wife told him as clear as she could, you will not be taking my kids across state lines ever. I could never make him choose over me versus his children. I couldn't. And I had to end that relationship. And it was the hardest thing I ever had to do, because I knew he wasn't going to let me go, but I knew I wasn't going to be able to maintain that. And if he ever left his children to be with me, that would have been a stigma, right? I don't think I ever would have been good enough or felt that gap, or I would have felt like, I don't know. Mike and I talked about this because it was so hard. I was like, I could fly back and forth. I could relocate.
You're gonna work it out.
I was trying to rationalize this whole
That's
thing.
when Reverend Gaylon, the juice was worth the squeeze.
So that's the thing. Was the
That's
juice
all I'm gonna
worth
say
the
about
squeeze?
that.
Honey, well, I don't know. You know, the juice was almost worth that squeeze. So Carolyn said absolutely growing resentment over time. Exactly. So you want to be with somebody, but you know over time they love their children. And I would never want him to ask me to be away from my child because I wasn't. It's just that my child was older and it was a different situations. And my child didn't need me, but he had younger children. So I don't know, Reverend Gaylon. I think, you know, you've experienced this from both ends. People making choices like that. How do you manage that when couples come to you?
Well, my perspective is this. If you choose to date someone with a child and you then choose to be committed marriage or committed relationship, I always just say one basic thing.
Mhm.
You're dating a package, not a person.
I like that.
Okay.
Am I
That's what
still
you
a
have to understand.
package? Am I still a package even though my
Yes.
kid is in college? I'm a package.
Yeah, but not as much. It's
Not
a
as
smaller
much.
package. The younger the child or the more the
Okay.
children, the larger the package. Okay.
Mike, why are you doing that? Why are you
Okay.
doing that? Why do you do that in the court? What does that mean?
Look, you're dating a package. Okay.
Oh,
Now, now,
I can
obviously,
understand.
now, whatever's going on now is their inside joke, y'all. It's not my. I'm not in it. So it's just you have to recognize what comes along with this package.
Mhm.
Okay, you just got to know that that this isn't going to just be quote unquote just cleanly between two people.
Yeah.
There are other factors that have to be acknowledged. There are other factors that have to be worked with, not around.
Right.
Because sometimes people try to work around people's kids.
Mhm.
Work with to be able to deal with. And and the reason why I say you're still a package, Christine, is because I know a gentleman that passed away he was like 80 a couple of years ago, early 80s. He was married for 50 years, had about 7 or 8 children. His wife passed away before him. He's living in the house by himself, and he started going to the quote unquote old folks events and found another widow, started dating her.
Okay.
And his children hated it. I ain't talking about disliked. Hated it. It almost like it was a level of betrayal
Wow.
that was beyond. I mean, like one kid stopped talking to him, one of the daughters. It's going to be a daughter when it's the daddy. Just putting that out there.
Wow, this is what I have to look forward to in my 50s, is being hated by children because their mothers
no, I'm not saying this is what you have to look for because he didn't have the conversation he should have had. His kids found out the wrong way. What he should have did was this, and this is what my because I had this happen to me with my grandfather on the McDowell side. After my grandmother passed away. She was very young. She was 58 when she passed away. I come to the house, and I would come to the house, and it was this lady that was like a family friend, always around. I'm like, okay. Then one day, I caught her coming out of my grandfather's bedroom. I'm like, Granddad, what's up with this? Point blank, like, what's up with this? And he sat me down, and he said, look, because I found out the wrong way. He said, she's not replacing your grandmother. Your granddaddy just wants to have somebody that he can be with and have a little bit of fun with. She's not replacing your grandmother, and basically be cool. Okay, he sat me down as a young man and said, this is what the deal is. But I shouldn't have had to find out that way.
Right.
I shouldn't have had to say, Granddad, what's going on with this? What ends up happening is people need to communicate to the people that matter. It ain't everybody's business, but it's even when you're dealing with older children, you got to sit down and you got to have the real conversations. Stop trying to avoid what needs to be said. People avoid uncomfortable situations and circumstances, and because of that, people fill in the gaps with their imagination, and that normally goes wrong.
I like that. And I think that's a lot of what goes on in relationships right now is just imagination. People filling in gaps where they think it needs to be filled in. So I'm going to say, Reverend Gaylon, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Everyone always loves your input. You bring so much rationale and common sense to what goes on in relationships, and it's so value added. I do listen and I do learn a lot. And I appreciate your feedback, and I know so does everyone else. So thanks again for joining us on another 5 F's to Love Real Talk with Men. Mike, you know, we always love hearing from you. You just, all I can say is you're like that harmony, that consistent harmony. And plus, just to let you know, the inside thing is that Mike laughs at me often because I'm actually dating a really, really nice guy. I just want to be clear, very nice guy. And everything is working out very well. They accept me where I'm at, what I'm doing, and I like that. So it kind of works for me in this space, and he's very supportive, and I like that about him. So I'm just going to say to you that that's the inside joke. Mike is laughing at me right now. Roz, thanks so much for joining us tonight. She said that was a great topic. Hey, Roz. And by the way, guys, Roz is on the 5 F's to Love Real Talk with Ladies. And you guys you saw the promo for their show coming up next week. Is real hot. Basically, I'm every woman. Why do I have to be? All I have to say is, why do I have to be? Gertrude, thank you so much. Love the topic. Enjoy it myself. I'm so glad you joined us this week. And gentlemen, I'm going to say thank you so much for joining us here at the 5 F's to Love. Be sure to join us next week when we have 5 F's to Love Real Talk with the Ladies. In the following week, we have our new show premiering with Rodney and Mike, Love, Life, and Relationships. So I will see you guys next week on the 5 F's to Love.
My name is Christine Burkett, the inventor of the 5 F's to Love. This is a compatibility app. It's an app that gives you an opportunity to rate words that start with the letter F in chronological order of importance to you, to help you find your one true love, your soulmate, and the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with. So after you've taken the time to rate your F's in chronological order, you send a link to the person, I don't know, you just met, or the person you've been dating for quite some time. Or maybe it's the person you've been married to for 30 to 40 to 50 years. And then you compare your top 5 F's to find out what things you have in common and things that you may perhaps need to work on. This is taking a simplistic perspective on how to find your one true love, your soulmate.